The phone was lying there on the kitchen counter, its screen lighting up in the dark of the night. I had been working late, like usual. Julia, my wife, had been acting distant for weeks, but I chalked it up to her being stressed out with work and the kids. The twins were growing up, and her sister had just dropped by to visit, so I assumed everything was fine. I never thought I'd have to worry about my marriage. We were a good couple, right? We had built a life together, raised 2 kids, and always managed to laugh through the chaos. Sure, Julia had been a little colder recently, but who wouldn't be after so many years? That night, I had just gotten out of the shower when I heard her voice. The soft, seductive tone cut through the air, and I froze. "Yeah, he's such an idiot," she whispered. "He thinks he's some hero, working 2 jobs, paying for the college funds. Little does he know, those twins aren't even his. Your sister helped me cover it up. He's been a fool from the start." My heart stopped. I hadn't even moved from where I was standing, still dripping wet, unsure if I had heard her right. She kept talking, but the words were like poison, slowly sinking into my chest. "You know," she continued, her voice dripping with arrogance, "he thinks he's doing the right thing. But really, I'm just playing him. He'll never figure it out. We've got this all under control." I could feel the anger rising in my throat, but I stayed frozen, unable to move. The reality of what I was hearing hit me like a freight train. How could she? How could my wife, the woman I trusted with everything, be so deceitful? The betrayal was suffocating, the weight of her lies crushing me. I stepped forward cautiously, trying to make sense of what I had just overheard. I could hear her giggle, the kind of giggle she used when she thought no one was listening, the kind that made me want to tear down the walls between us. "Don't worry," she said softly. "He'll never know. You're mine now." I could barely stand. The ground beneath my feet felt like it was spinning, my mind racing to process what was happening. The twins, they weren't mine? Everything I had believed in, everything I had worked for, was shattered in a matter of seconds. I should have confronted her then, but I didn't. I stayed still, clenching my fists as the tears of anger welled up. But this wasn't the time. No, I needed to think. I needed to plan my next move. I didn't say anything as I grabbed my phone off the counter, staring at the screen as her words echoed in my head. I had to find the truth, not just in my heart, but in something concrete. I couldn't let this go, couldn't let her get away with what she had done. The next morning, I did something I never thought I would. I got a DNA test for the twins. As soon as the results came back, I had everything I needed. There was no denying it anymore. Thanksgiving Day came, and we all sat around the dinner table, the laughter and the small talk filling the air. But I was far from the happy husband. My mind was on the envelope in my pocket, the proof that would shatter everything. As we sat down to eat, I made my move. "Julia," I said calmly, my voice steady even though I felt like my world was collapsing. "You should see what I found out." The room fell silent as I pulled out the DNA test results and placed them on the table. The look on her face was priceless. Shock, fear, denial. But it was too late. The truth was out. I watched as her mask slipped, the facade of the perfect wife crumbling before my eyes. And that's when I realized everything I had known was a lie. I couldn't stay there, couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. Without a word, I grabbed my coat, my keys, and walked out of the house, leaving her standing there, speechless. And as I walked out into the cold night, my thoughts were already set. I would vanish. I'd leave everything behind, start fresh, and destroy everything she had built. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about taking back my life. I couldn't stand being in that house anymore. The place that had once been filled with love, laughter, and warmth now felt like a tomb. My mind was a battlefield, the sounds of Julia's voice from the night before still echoing in my ears. The lies, the deceit, the betrayal, everything was so clear now, and it hit me harder than I could have ever imagined. I didn't know where I was going, or what I was going to do next, but I had made up my mind. I needed to vanish, to leave everything behind. My family, my friends, the life I had worked so hard to build. It all meant nothing anymore. I drove for hours without any real destination. The road seemed endless, my thoughts even more so. The kids, they weren't mine. The idea of them calling me dad, for all these years, all the times I'd changed their diapers, taught them to ride bikes, all of it felt like a cruel joke. And Julia, I had been blind to everything. How could she do this to me? I remembered the way her voice had sounded during that phone call. The way she had acted so smug, so sure of herself, like she was in control of everything. My stomach twisted with rage. It was as though she had planned this all along, manipulating me into believing she was the perfect wife, the perfect mother. I wasn't just a fool, I was a complete sucker. And now, I had to pay the price for my ignorance. I didn't call anyone. I didn't want to hear their sympathies, "Oh, I'm so sorry, man." I didn't need pity. What I needed was revenge. I needed to show Julia that her lies would cost her everything. I had worked hard for everything I had. She had been nothing but a part of the picture, a picture I no longer wanted. A few days later, after finding a small, anonymous apartment and securing my finances, I started making plans. Everything had to be perfect. I needed to be strategic. Julia thought I was just going to disappear. But I wasn't just disappearing. I was going to destroy everything she had. I sold the house. All of it. The house, the car, the furniture, everything was gone. I liquidated my assets, turning them into something much harder to trace. Julia thought I was just another man running away from his responsibilities. But I had a plan that would bring her to her knees. I knew she would be expecting me to be gone for good. What she didn't know was that I was still watching. Watching everything she did, every move she made. I didn't trust her for a second, and I knew she was going to make a mistake. She was a reckless woman, and I knew sooner or later she would slip up. During this time, I had also been reaching out to old friends and business partners. I was quietly rebuilding my empire, only this time, I was going to make sure Julia would never see it coming. I wasn't going to leave without a mark. Weeks passed, and every time I heard something new about her or saw her posting something online, I could feel the fire building inside me. It wasn't just the betrayal anymore, it was the humiliation. She had lied to me for so long, and I had been too blind to see it. But now, I saw everything clearly. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was playing me, using me for everything I was worth. Then one day, I got a phone call that made my blood run cold. "Hey, man," my old buddy Tom said, his voice low, almost hesitant. "I just wanted to let you know. Julia's been seeing someone. It's serious. She's been with him for a while." I couldn't believe it. But at the same time, it made sense. This man, this lover of hers, wasn't just some fling. No, Julia had been planning this for a long time. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. It was a slap in the face. But I wasn't angry anymore. No, I was beyond anger. I was calculating. Every step I took from that moment on was part of a plan to destroy her life just as she had destroyed mine. I hung up the phone, took a deep breath, and smiled. It was time. Time for me to return. Time for me to make my move. A decade had passed since I had left. A decade since I walked away from everything, my home, my kids, my so-called wife. In that time, I had become something else entirely. No longer the naive, trusting man who had once believed in the family unit, I was now a man hardened by betrayal. And as much as I tried to move on, as much as I tried to build something new, one thing never left my mind. Julia. My return was unexpected, to say the least. I didn't come back for a reunion. I didn't come back for closure. I came back with one thing on my mind, revenge. And I was prepared to make Julia regret every single lie, every single betrayal. The moment I set foot back in my hometown, I could feel the weight of my transformation. It wasn't just my appearance that had changed. The man I once was long gone. In his place stood a successful, ruthless businessman, an entity that no one, not even Julia, would recognize. I didn't go to my old house. I didn't even go near the places I used to frequent. I didn't need the memories, nor did I need the people who knew me as the man I used to be. I had no interest in reintroducing myself to my old life. No, I had far more important things to take care of. First, I needed to make sure that Julia knew exactly who I was now, that she understood the consequences of her actions. I started small, building my empire in the shadows. I had the power now, something I had never had before. And I wasn't going to waste it. I knew that Julia had to have heard of me, of the success I'd achieved. She might not know what I had become, but I was sure she had an inkling. No one could build such a reputation without people talking. I had my ways of ensuring that people in her circle were aware of my return. News travels fast in small towns, and within a few weeks, everyone knew that I was back. The whispers started. The rumors about what had happened to me, where I had gone, and who I had become. Julia, of course, had no idea. But that was all part of the plan. I wanted her to think that I was just another lost soul coming back home, broken and beaten. She had no idea how wrong she was. It wasn't until I had set everything in motion that I finally decided it was time to confront her. I knew where she would be, at a local charity event, a gala for the town's elite. It was the perfect place. She had never been able to resist showing off in front of the people who once admired her. I arrived at the event in a black suit that screamed wealth and confidence. I had spent the last decade becoming someone who was now more powerful than her in every sense of the word. As I walked into the room, the eyes of every person in the place were on me. It wasn't arrogance. It was simply the fact that I had something they all wanted. I scanned the room until I found her, Julia. The woman who had destroyed me with her lies, who had turned my entire world upside down. She looked exactly the same as she did when I left, only now, there was an unmistakable air of tension around her. She didn't see me at first, but that would change soon. I walked straight toward her, my presence undeniable. Her eyes finally landed on me, and for a split second, I saw it, the panic, the recognition. She froze, her glass of wine hanging in midair as her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "Hello, Julia," I said coldly, the words slipping from my tongue like poison. Her face drained of color as she tried to force a smile. "Nick." "I didn't." "Don't pretend like you didn't know I was coming," I interrupted. "I'm sure the town has had plenty of whispers about me by now." She swallowed, looking away for a moment. It's been a long time. I didn't think you'd come back." I took a step closer, my eyes locked onto hers. "I didn't come back for you, Julia. I came back to finish what you started. You ruined my life, and now it's time for you to pay the price." Her face twisted, trying to hold onto her composure, but I could see the cracks forming. She had never been a strong woman, not like me. She was always the type to manipulate, to use people for her own gain. And I had been her greatest victim. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and anger. "I don't owe you anything, Nick. You left. You abandoned us." "No, Julia," I said, my voice low but laced with fury. "I didn't abandon you. I walked away from a lie. And now I'm here to make sure you never forget what you did to me." The room felt suffocating as Julia stood there, her once perfect composure now cracking under the weight of my words. She tried to regain control, a fake smile creeping onto her face, but I could see the fear in her eyes. This wasn't the confident woman who had once manipulated me. This was a terrified shell of the person I had once loved. "You really think you can just waltz back into my life and destroy everything I've worked for?" She spat, her voice cold, but her hands trembled ever so slightly. "You think I'll just roll over and let you ruin me? You have no idea what you're talking about." I smirked, watching as she struggled to hold on to her dignity. "Oh, I have a pretty good idea, Julia. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've watched you. I've heard you. I know about the lies you've been telling, the affair, the manipulation. You thought I wouldn't figure it out, but I've been watching, and now it's time to pay the price." Her face contorted with anger, and for a brief moment, I saw the woman who had broken me all those years ago. She had always been this way, cold, calculating, using people for her own selfish desires. But now, she was cornered, and it was a beautiful thing to witness. "You're pathetic," she sneered. "You think you can come back and ruin my life just because you're some millionaire now? You think that matters? You really have no idea who you're dealing with." I leaned in, my voice lowering to a dangerous whisper. "No, Julia. You're the one who has no idea who you're dealing with. You've been living a lie for so long that you don't even recognize the truth when it hits you in the face. You ruined my life. You stole from me. You took everything I worked for, and you thought I wouldn't find out. But I did." Her eyes flickered with panic, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her armor. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She was starting to realize that this wasn't some game. This wasn't about money, power, or revenge. It was about everything she had taken from me. "I didn't steal anything from you," she hissed, but I could tell she was trying to convince herself more than me. "You left me. You abandoned us. You gave up on everything." I chuckled bitterly, my eyes never leaving hers. "I didn't give up on anything, Julia. You gave up on me the moment you decided to betray me. You gave up on us the moment you decided to sleep with him, your lover, the man you've been with all this time. You gave up on me when you lied to my face and told me everything was fine. So don't stand there and try to turn this around on me." Her face reddened with anger, her lips curling into a snarl. "You have no right to talk to me like that. You have no idea what it's been like for me, raising the kids, trying to hold everything together while you were gone. You think this has been easy for me?" I leaned in even closer, my voice sharp as a blade. "You think you've had it hard? Do you think I had it easy, Julia? I spent years thinking I was raising children that weren't even mine. I spent years thinking you were the woman I married, when all along, you were lying to me. So don't talk to me about what's hard. Because right now, it's hard for you. And it's only going to get harder." She recoiled as if my words had physically struck her. I saw the tears welling up in her eyes, but I didn't care. For all the pain I had endured, this was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the reckoning. The moment when Julia finally understood that the man she had once broken was no longer the same man. "You think this is over?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "You think you can just come back and destroy me, ruin my life like this? You can't. I won't let you." I shook my head slowly, my eyes cold and unfeeling. "You don't get it, Julia. It's already over. I've been planning this for years. You've been living in your little bubble, thinking you could get away with it. But I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to let you destroy everything I've worked for." Her face twisted with rage, but there was nothing she could do. The truth was out. The lies she had built her life on were crumbling around her, and there was no way to stop it now. "You're pathetic," she repeated, her words losing their sting. She was grasping for control, but she had already lost. "You think you can come back and just take everything from me? You're nothing." I stepped back, looking down at her with cold, detached eyes. "No, Julia. You're nothing. And that's what's going to destroy you in the end. You thought I was weak. You thought I was nothing. But look at me now." I turned away, leaving her standing there, broken. I didn't need to say anything more. The damage had already been done. And as I walked out of the gala, I knew it wasn't over yet. No, this was just the beginning. The days after my confrontation with Julia were a blur of satisfaction and frustration. Satisfaction because, for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had regained control over my life. Frustration because I knew this was just the beginning. The hard part was yet to come. Julia had tried to spin her lies one more time, calling me and texting me constantly, as if she could somehow apologize her way out of this mess. But I wasn't interested in her apologies. I wasn't interested in her attempts to explain herself. I was beyond that now. She had crossed a line, and nothing she said could undo the damage. She even tried to play the victim, sending messages about how hard it had been to raise the kids alone, how I had left her with all the responsibility. But I wasn't buying it anymore. The twins weren't mine. They had never been mine, and everything we had built together was a lie. I was done feeling sorry for her. I was done with the guilt that had plagued me for so many years. Julia had built a life on my trust, and now she was going to pay for it. The first real blow came when the media started picking up on my return. There were whispers about me, about my sudden success, about the fortune I had built from nothing. It was a small town, and news like mine spread like wildfire. People wanted to know who I was, what I was doing, and why I had left everything behind. But what really shocked Julia was when the rumors reached her circle. It wasn't just about my wealth or my business ventures anymore. It was about the affair. It was about how I had returned as the first billionaire in town. And Julia, the woman who had tried to ruin me, was now at the center of the scandal. Her friends were no longer supporting her. They had all heard the whispers about her affair, about her lies. They had started to see her for what she really was, a manipulative, deceitful woman who had used her family to get ahead. One night, I received an unexpected visit from one of her closest friends, Rachel. She was someone I had always gotten along with, someone who had once told me I was lucky to have Julia. But now, she had come to apologize. "I'm sorry, Nick," Rachel said as she sat down in front of me. "I had no idea. I didn't know she was doing that to you. I didn't know what was really going on behind closed doors." I looked at her, my expression cold. "It doesn't matter now, Rachel. She did what she did, and I'm done with it. There's no going back." She sighed, her eyes filled with regret. "I can't believe she would do this. I should have seen the signs. But I was so blinded by her, I didn't want to believe it. I'm so sorry." I leaned back in my chair, looking out the window. The town had changed in the years I'd been gone. So had I. I was no longer the man I had once been. The man who had been betrayed by the woman he loved. I had become someone else, someone stronger, someone capable of destroying everything in my path. "I don't need your apologies," I said quietly. "I don't need anyone's apologies. Julia's made her choices, and now it's time for me to make mine." Rachel nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know what she was thinking, Nick. But I know she was wrong. She doesn't deserve you." I didn't answer. What was there to say? Julia didn't deserve me. But that didn't matter anymore. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. It was about the life I had built, the empire I had created from the wreckage she left behind. The next few weeks were filled with more surprises. Julia tried everything to salvage her reputation, but the damage was done. She tried to pretend that everything was fine, that she was the same woman she had always been. But the cracks were showing, and people were starting to see her for who she truly was. I made sure of it. I didn't need to expose her any further. The whispers had already started. Her lies were unraveling before her eyes, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I didn't want to destroy her publicly. That wasn't necessary. She had done it to herself. But I had to make sure she knew I had moved on, that I had the life she could never have. I kept building my business, expanding, making more connections, and becoming even more successful. I didn't need her anymore. I didn't need the life she had taken from me. I had built something of my own, something that was far more valuable than anything she could ever offer. Julia was left to pick up the pieces of the life she had ruined. She had lost everything: her friends, her family, her reputation. And as much as she tried to put on a brave face, I knew the truth. She had nothing left. And that was exactly what she deserved. Days turned into weeks, and the fallout from my return only continued to escalate. Julia's life, the one she had carefully constructed on lies, began to crumble in front of her eyes. There was no escape from the truth now. Her affair, her manipulation, her betrayal, it was all out in the open. She could no longer hide behind her facade of being the perfect wife or mother. The town was buzzing with gossip, and everyone knew what she had done. I could see the toll it was taking on her. Every time we crossed paths, whether at the grocery store or at a business meeting, I could see the weight of her guilt bearing down on her. Her eyes no longer held that same smug confidence. There was fear now. Fear that people were starting to see her for who she really was. But there was something more satisfying than seeing her squirm. It was watching her try so desperately to maintain control, to keep up the image she had spent years constructing. She tried to salvage her relationships with the people in her life, but they were no longer buying her act. Her friends had distanced themselves, her family was growing wary of her, and the people who had once admired her were starting to question everything they had believed about her. I wasn't doing anything to make it worse. Julia was doing all the damage herself. She had dug her own grave, and all I had to do was step back and watch as she fell deeper into it. But despite everything, Julia still hadn't given up. She still hadn't admitted to her wrongdoings. She still hadn't apologized. I wasn't expecting her to. That wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted was for her to truly realize what she had lost and to understand the gravity of her actions. Then came the final blow. It happened one evening when I received a message from a familiar number. "Julia. Nick, please," the text read. "Can we talk? I'm sorry for everything. I made a mistake. I don't want to lose you. I never wanted to hurt you." I stared at the message for a moment, my heart hardened by everything she had put me through. I had no interest in hearing her excuses or her apologies anymore. But something inside me told me I had to face her one last time. I agreed to meet her at a local cafe, the same place we had visited on our first date, the place where we had shared laughs and dreams about the future. It seemed fitting, I guess, that our final confrontation would take place there. When I arrived, she was already sitting at a table, her hands wringing nervously in her lap. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying, and there was a slight tremble in her voice when she saw me. I didn't know who I was anymore. "Nick," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what I was doing. I was lost, and I made so many mistakes. I thought I could control everything, but I couldn't. I sat down across from her, watching her carefully. I wasn't sure what I was expecting from this conversation, but I knew it wasn't going to change anything. It wasn't going to make me forget what she had done. "Don't," I said, cutting her off. "Don't try to make excuses, Julia. It's too late for that. You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew you were lying to me. You knew you were betraying me. And you did it anyway." She flinched, but I didn't care. She had made her choices, and now it was time to face the consequences. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said softly, her voice cracking with emotion. "I just want you to know that I regret everything. I never wanted to hurt you. I was selfish, and I see that now. I see everything I've lost." I leaned back in my chair, looking at her with cold eyes. "It's too late for regret, Julia. You took everything from me, and now I'm taking it all back." She looked at me, the realization sinking in. She knew what I meant. I had built an empire from the ground up. I had created a life for myself that was bigger and better than anything she could have ever dreamed of. And now, I was going to make sure she understood the price of her actions. "Everything you build on my back is gone," I said, my voice unwavering. "The life you've been living, the life you thought was yours, doesn't belong to you anymore. It's mine now, and I'll make sure everyone knows it." Her face turned pale, the weight of my words hitting her like a ton of bricks. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up my hand, stopping her. "I don't need your apology, Julia. I said, standing up. What I need is for you to understand that you can't run from the consequences. You can't escape what you've done, and I'll make sure the world knows the truth about you. I turned to leave, but as I reached the door, I paused. I looked back at her one last time. Goodbye, Julia, I said. This is the end. And with that, I walked out of the cafe, leaving her behind. For good. The days after I left Julia at the cafe were strangely quiet. The storm had passed. The confrontation had happened, the final blow delivered. But I knew that the real work was just beginning. I wasn't done yet. I had plans that would leave her and everything she had built in ruins. I had made it clear to Julia that she could no longer hide behind her lies, but now I needed to show her just how powerful I had become. She thought she had won all those years ago when she had convinced me that everything was fine, that I was just a good provider, a good dad. But she was wrong. I wasn't just some fool who could be manipulated anymore. I had reinvented myself, turned my anger and betrayal into fuel for something much greater. I had spent the last decade carefully plotting my revenge, but it wasn't just about destroying her. It was about showing the world who she really was and taking everything she had built with the same ruthless efficiency she had used to tear my life apart. I had already begun the process. The first step was simple enough: sever all ties. I had no interest in dealing with her, her friends, or anyone connected to her. I pulled my business deals away from her associates, distancing myself from every connection that could potentially help her. Julia's little empire of lies had depended on a fragile network of people who were loyal to her, but I could see the cracks already starting to form. The whispers were growing louder, and I wasn't about to let her escape without facing the consequences. A few weeks after the cafe meeting, I decided to attend a local gala, a prestigious event where Julia had always made sure to flaunt her status. It was the perfect place to set the final stage of my plan into motion. She would be there, of course, with her new lover, the man she had chosen over me. I had no doubt she would be acting as though nothing had changed, pretending to be the same woman she had been before everything fell apart. But I knew better. As soon as I walked into the gala, I could feel the tension in the air. Heads turned, and eyes followed me as I moved through the crowd. I wasn't just a guest at this event, I was a spectacle. People whispered, wondering who I was, what I had done to achieve the success that had everyone talking. But there was one person in the room who couldn't hide her anxiety: Julia. She was standing at the center of the room, looking as perfect as ever, but there was something different about her. Gone was the smug confidence, replaced by the nervous twitch in her eye whenever she noticed me glancing in her direction. Her lover, the man who had helped her tear apart everything I had worked for, was by her side, trying to act like he belonged. But I knew the truth. He was just another pawn in her game. I made my way toward them, my eyes locked onto Julia. When she finally saw me, her face paled, and she almost dropped the glass of champagne in her hand. She took a step back, as if she could somehow retreat from the situation, but it was too late. "I didn't think you'd show up," she said, her voice shaky, though she tried to mask the fear with a forced smile. "What are you doing here?" "I think you already know," I replied, my tone colder than I had ever heard it. "You didn't think I'd leave quietly, did you?" She blinked, clearly trying to grasp for control of the situation, but it was slipping away from her. Her lover, sensing her discomfort, stepped forward. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, trying to act like a tough guy. But his bravado was nothing compared to the power I had amassed in the years since I left. I smiled, a tight, cruel smile. "The problem is that you're standing next to a woman who has ruined people's lives. You're her latest victim, and I'm sure you'll find out soon enough just how well she plays the game." Julia's eyes darted between me and her lover. She could see the writing on the wall. This wasn't just about me anymore. I wasn't trying to make her feel guilty, nor was I seeking closure. No, I had far bigger plans. I was going to make sure that the world knew exactly who she was and what she had done. Her lover didn't know how to respond, and that's when I dropped the bombshell. "I've made sure that the people you've been lying to know the truth," I said, speaking louder now so everyone could hear. "I've made sure that your lies are exposed for what they really are. And the best part? You can't stop it." The room seemed to hold its breath as the realization set in. Julia's carefully crafted image, the life she had built on deceit, was crumbling in front of her. The whispers were already circulating, the news already spreading. Her friends, her family, everyone who had stood by her were now hearing the truth. For the first time in a long time, I saw her eyes fill with panic. It was the kind of panic that comes when you realize everything you've worked for is slipping away. Her voice wavered as she tried to hold on to some shred of dignity. "You can't do this," she said, her words now a desperate plea. "You'll regret this, Nick." But I had no intentions of regretting anything. I had spent too many years watching her walk all over me. Too many years letting her manipulate me. No, this was my time. This was the moment I had been working toward. And there was no going back. "I'm not doing anything, Julia," I said, my voice low but steady. "I'm just making sure you face the consequences of your actions. And believe me, they're coming. I'm not the one who's going to regret anything." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, her perfect world shattered. I had done it. Everything I set out to do, every carefully crafted plan, every calculated move, had worked. Julia's world was now a hollow shell, the lies she built her life on crashing down around her. But as I stood there, watching her crumble in the aftermath, something inside me still felt empty. It was strange. After all these years, after everything she had taken from me, I thought seeing her pay for what she did would bring me peace. But it didn't. Instead, there was just this overwhelming sense of emptiness, as though I had won, but at the cost of my own soul. The gala continued around me, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I had taken everything she held dear, and she knew it. The whispers were already spreading like wildfire, and soon, no one in town would be able to pretend they didn't know the truth about Julia. But even as I stood there, watching her try to salvage whatever dignity she had left, I realized that the damage she had caused would haunt me for a long time. Sure, she had been the one who destroyed our family, who tore everything apart, but I had been complicit in my own way. I had let it happen. I had let her manipulate me, control me. I had let her lie to me for years, and that was the part one couldn't forgive myself for. I had spent so much time focusing on revenge, on making her pay, that I had forgotten what it really meant to heal. I had been consumed by my need for justice, and in doing so, I had lost sight of everything else, my own happiness, my own peace of mind. Revenge, I realized, wasn't as sweet as they made it out to be. It was hollow, fleeting, and ultimately unsatisfying. As the night wore on, I couldn't help but watch Julia from a distance. She had tried so hard to hold on to her image of being the perfect wife, the perfect mother. She had tried to make herself out to be the victim in all of this, but the truth was clear to everyone now. She wasn't a victim. She was a liar. She was a manipulator. Her lover had left her side by the time I made my way to the door. I watched as she stood there alone, surrounded by people who had once adored her but now looked at her with distrust and disappointment. I knew that this was the moment she had been dreading. This was the moment she realized that there was no escaping her past. She had played her cards, and now she had nothing left. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I had walked away, leaving her behind, but it wasn't just about leaving her behind physically. I had left her behind emotionally as well. I was done with her lies, done with the manipulation. I had given her far more chances than she deserved, and now I was free. I had taken back control of my life, and I wasn't going to let her have any more of it. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt the weight of the years lift off my shoulders. It was over. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of clarity. The anger, the frustration, the pain, it was all starting to fade. I was moving on, and I was going to be okay. But even as I walked away from the gala, from Julia, and from everything that had once been my life, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I had a long way to go before I could truly heal. There would still be days when I would be haunted by the memories of what I had lost. There would still be moments when I questioned my choices, when I wondered if I had done the right thing. But those moments were just that, moments. I would not let them define me. I had rebuilt myself from the ground up, and I would continue to do so. I had learned the hard way that trust was fragile, that love could be used as a weapon, and that sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. But I had also learned that I was stronger than I had ever known. I had learned that I could survive, that I could rebuild, and that I could rise above anything life threw at me. As the night stretched on, I found myself standing in front of my apartment, the city lights casting a faint glow on the streets. I had come a long way from the man I once was, the man who had been torn apart by Julia's betrayal. Now, I was someone new. Someone who had learned the hard way what it meant to lose everything, and what it meant to take it all back. I didn't look back at the gala, at the people inside, or at the woman who had once been my wife. I didn't need to. The past was the past, and I was done with it. I had walked away, and I was finally free.